Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Father Pierre Gibault was an 18th century Jesuit missionary and priest in the Northwest Territory. He was born in 1737, ordained as a priest in 1768, and appointed Vicar General for the Illinois country. He oversaw a circuit of parishes including Kaskaskia, Ste Genevieve, and Cahokia. Gibault Catholic High School in Waterloo, Illinois is named for Father Gibault. I first learned of Gibault High School during a January 9th, 2014 TV news report while most of the St. Louis area schools were closed and students were shut out of class that week due to snow and cold. Gibault students had no snow days because their school connects them to the school and to each other through the internet e-learning program called My Big Campus. I called the principal of Gibault High School, Russ, to discuss his school's ability to keep students learning despite the weather. During that conversation, I invited Principal Hart to come here and inform you about e-learning. Mr. Hart has been an educator for more than 25 years, teaching in both public and Catholic schools. He was an administrator for 3 years at St. Joseph's Elementary and 10 years at Gibault High. Principal Russ Hart, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I thought it was pretty amazing when I heard on the TV news that despite the fact that almost every other student in the St. Louis area after the storm was on the 5th of January.
Right.
I think,
First 4 days of the semester, no school.
It was like gone.
Exactly.
And some other places, you know, the entire week was just blanked out.
Right.
So, but you guys were still learning.
Still learning.
So why don't we describe that process? Now, one of the things I did discover, and by the way, the TV news that I'm referring to is Fox 2, KTVI in St. Louis, and they had previously done a, I don't know, a 2 or 3 minute piece about your high school long before this snowstorm, saying that you guys were practicing up for the event just in case there was ever a snow day, that you'd be ready for this and your students would be able to go to school despite not being able to get there. So let's just start there.
Well, when we started this My Big Campus journey 2 years ago, what really began that was our goal to be without textbooks, because we felt like textbooks are severely limited. They're out of date when you bring them into your school, and they limit the teacher. So really how we discovered this My Big Campus was trying to figure out a way to work without textbooks. My Big Campus as a learning management system allows us to have all of our teachers take their curriculum and all their resources and put it on My Big Campus, share it with the students in a way that is very intuitive, very easy to learn, and I would have to say a little bit fun for the students
now let's
faculty.
Be specific so people understand that My Big Campus is an internet program.
Right, it's in the cloud.
So it's out there in the cloud,
right.
And that teachers and students access it through their computers or their smartphones or an electronic device, a notepad, whatever.
Right, it's a learning management system. In college, most students are very familiar because most colleges use Blackboard. It's a lot like Blackboard, although we like to poke a little fun at Blackboard and say, except that ours is a lot of fun and easier to use. And so it manages all of our curriculum and it does it very well. So that's where we started with this. And then after a year of training and everybody working on this, we had this idea that in the back of our minds, we always kind of knew we wanted to use it for a snow day. But we weren't really sure if we were ready. So when August rolled around, I brought my administrative team in. I said, I think we can do this. We need to figure out how to do it and make sure that we do it well. So there came the practice day. So I informed, my boss in the Belleville Diocese that, the day after Thanksgiving break, we're not coming back to school. Everybody's staying home. We're going to have a practice snow day.
How do they react to that?
Well, it took a little explaining. They were very positive because it's very forward thinking, you know, and this is the direction that schools need to go. And so they were very supportive, but it did take a little explaining to say that, you know, we're not coming back for that day when they expected us to be in school. So we told all the students, all the faculty, all administrators, no one could be in school on that day. You just couldn't. You had to do this from home. It was just like a fire drill. I mean, it had to be done well, and we had to make sure that we could really do this before we had the winter set in. And by the way, we had no idea the winter was going to be
like it turned out to be.
No.
Right. Now, the state has certain requirements. You have to be in class X number of days per year in order to have an accredited year, right?
Right.
How does this practice day or the snow days that the students weren't there but were online, how does that affect that?
Well, we have to be accredited by the state of Illinois, and we are accredited high school. The law says that students must be present for instruction 5 hours a day. We interpret that, as probably most people do, that doesn't mean you have to be in a building. I think people would fall short of defining it that way, because then that means you couldn't learn, say, at the Botanical Gardens, or at the Science Center, or at an art museum, or any other field trip. So I don't think anybody's going to define it that close, that you have to be in a building. So that's how we're interpreting that. So as we went through this, we knew that we would get 5 hours of instruction out of that day. The problem was reducing it to that, really, because we really believe we do more than that on an e-learning day. So we had our practice day, and it was very interesting because I think our students thought, well, we're going to have a practice snow day. This is going to be great. You know, we're going to stay at home and
have fun.
Have fun. It's going to be it's going to be a day off. Our teachers knew it was not going to be. It's a lot of work. It's more work for a teacher to put up now as we're just learning this. I'd have to say today, it is much more work for our teachers to put up an e-learning lesson than it is to do a regular lesson in a classroom. So they knew it was going to be a lot of work. They were putting a lot of time into this practice day. But the students, they had no idea what was coming. I don't think the amount of work that we were going to ask them. I know this because the girls' basketball team that day had contacted me, and I said, Mr. Hart, this was hard. There's too much work. We did more work today than we do when we're in school. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you don't want me to do these days, you shouldn't be telling me that, right? Because that's exactly what we want. We want to make sure that it's a meaningful and a productive day. Otherwise, there'd be no point. Snow days have always been a problem for me. I've taught in 5 different states across America, and every state handles snow days differently. And the communities have these expectations that they handle them in certain ways. Even if the administrators think maybe we should be in school, there is pressure, you know, from community that, well, it's not safe to go, or it's too cold to go. And so you tend to, you know, work with the people you're serving, which is completely understandable. But it really bothers me because I think there are many days we should be in school, and now we've lost that day. So that practice day was our way of figuring out if we can, you know, if we could really do this. And then afterwards, we did surveys of the students and the teachers, and we knew after those surveys this was going to be a good thing. Probably our biggest surprise is that we didn't realize that nobody else that we could find does this. We thought we didn't think this was outside. We knew it was outside the box, but we didn't really realize how outside the box this was going to be.
So are you going to write up a paper about this?
Well, I tell you what, it's been a whirlwind for us because we have, yesterday I spent time with 2 professors, one in California, one in New York, who have already written about us on their educational blogs. I spent time being interviewed by an educational online magazine that's very popular with teachers. It's just been so busy with how this is connecting with people. And it's worked out really well. You know, we had to get buy-in from the teachers and the students and the parents, really. That was the real key. And I think that the students were the group that I was the most worried about. And that's what I'm telling everybody. You know, if you want to do this, the students are the ones that you're going to really have to get buy-in. And I think it took them a little while to say, yeah, this is okay. This is good.
Now, yours is a private school, so you have a little more flexibility to do things than at a public school. Can you see public schools being able to initiate a program like this?
Well, I think it's possible. I think all things are possible. I think it's easier in a private school. Certainly easier in our Catholic school than it would be in a large public school. I think we have a lot more autonomy. We're not quite as bound by state testing as everybody else. All the public schools who are trying to achieve certain goals with that testing. So we have a little bit more latitude and certainly a lot more autonomy to make decisions at a Catholic school. I couldn't imagine training a big school system because we have 26 teachers. That was a lot of work. I mean, it took us 2 years to be really good at this. And I can't imagine the cost and the time that it would take a public school with 200 teachers, 300 teachers to accomplish this. I think they could do it. The other part of that is your students have to be ready. Can they access, do they have devices? Can they access the internet? Can they access My Big Campus or whatever learning management system that district chooses to have?
Do all of your students have private, is this like their computers, their tablets, their smartphones, or does the school issue some?
The trend in America for a while, and still fairly popular, is that the schools are buying devices. We chose not to do that, and we really believe that in the next 10 years you'll see schools not doing that anymore, and they're just going to say, if you're going to come to school, this is a tool. This is like a notebook or a pencil back in our day. You have to have this. For a lot of reasons we went that way, but for the main reason is that you have, if you're going to do that, every 3 years you're going to be making that investment again, and it's quite an expense. So we ask all of our students, we required all of our students to have a device. And that if we had any students that couldn't afford that device, we made sure that they had one. Just through either donations or through our own budgeting process, we made sure everybody had one.
And so, now I told you before we went on the air, and so I'll say it again here, that I spent some time on YouTube looking up My Big Campus, and found that there's considerable material out there. And I saw this one piece where a teacher was going through the process of creating a quiz. And I thought, well, this is very interesting. And so in the future, that might, instead of sitting down with paper in front of you, you might be somewhere with a computer in front of you taking the quiz that your teacher created. Right.
Now, we have done a few quizzes that way. Even in the classroom, the teacher can time the quiz. So it opens up, let's say, at 10 and it closes at 10:20. So all of the students in that classroom can get on at 10 o'clock in her classroom, take that quiz, and then at 10:20 it shuts off. So no one can access that again. So then you don't worry about that quiz, being passed around to other students or being photographed and passed around. Not that anybody would ever do that, but just, in case that would happen. So it provides a little security. But for testing and quizzing, we still do a lot of paper tests at Gibault because we feel like it's a little bit more secure. We're not quite comfortable with evaluating the work you've done completely on the computer. And I'm sure there'll be a day we get to that. But right now, we still do a lot of paper testing.
I noticed also when I was looking at this teacher creating this quiz that she showed that something about standards. And so apparently, now, I don't know, I've heard of Common Core. I've heard of No Child Left Behind. I know that these mechanisms create certain standards, I guess, and I'm not quite sure how to describe what a standard is. You probably do better than me. But do Catholic schools, or your school in particular, are you bound by these same sort of standards?
In the Diocese of Belleville, they're asking us to follow the Common Core as they develop. Not every subject's been developed at this point, but they will ask us to do that. They've always asked us to meet the Illinois state standards. And the beauty of My Big Campus is when a teacher is making a lesson, you can go to a certain part of that My Big Campus and you can identify your state standards or Common Core standards that lesson is meeting, And you just simply click on that, and it then becomes a part of your lesson so that you can show that on this lesson, on this day, that you were working towards that common goal, or that Illinois state standard.
Explain what, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, who are not educated on this. What do standards mean, and what is it, you know, how do you know what a standard is and what you're trying to work your kids towards?
Well, the standards are developed typically by a state organization, and it's approved by the state, and then those standards are very clear, and they're very available to all of the schools in the state.
What might be an example of a standard?
An example of a standard might be that you need to be able to do this type of math problem or this type of critical thinking at this point in your development. You know, at grade 2, grade 4, grade 6, grade 8, whatever. And so teachers know what those are, and then you are working your lessons to meet that goal, and then you hope, of course, that your kids, you know, ideally all of them reach that goal by a certain time.
And
of course they don't, and they're moving along, and then you can identify as you go through your, you know, as the students move through your school, you can also identify if there's any of those goals that you're not meeting, and then you can work on figuring out why that is, and so that you can improve. The goals are very important just because it gives you a little bit of a guide, but most schools would tell you that goals are written at a minimal level, and you know, most schools go way beyond those goals. If you just simply met those minimal goals, I would be saying you are shortchanging not only your students, but you're shortchanging your community.
It has been said, it's been said here from people in that chair, that there are students in some schools districts, inner city, St. Louis in particular, that they're lucky if they can get those students to those minimal goals. How is that, and what is it that can be done, and could this program be used in order to expand the horizons of those young people?
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to address the St. Louis issues, but you know, I have taught in many different levels.
Well, it's East
schools.
St. Louis then.
East,
I mean,
you know,
a system you're probably familiar with.
You know, I think that a learning management system like My Big Campus would benefit many students. Part of that is because our kids are, that's what they know. They're digital natives, really, so to speak. Not like you and I were. When we have to do something, we have to, you know, this is a new thing that's bringing us anxiety and a little bit of stress. Although it does for the students, it's exciting for them to be able to get on My Big Campus and interact with their teachers and their friends in a new way, based on education, and I think that could help them.
It was described by one group that My Big Campus was sort of like the Facebook of education.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that to a point. Now that may sound bad to some people. I would disagree.
It gives the students the ability to interact with each other or to help each other. Like, I don't get this.
Exactly.
Can you explain to me? They also have the ability to go to the teacher.
Exactly.
And be able to ask questions there or get better definitions.
Exactly. And it's it is on the Facebook platform. So it's like a social network, but it's all based on education, and it's really only for our school, so it's very protected. So, you know, if you were from outside our school district, you really
can't get in.
You can't access that. So there's no worry about predators or anybody being, you know, associated with our My Big Campus site. So it's very family oriented. Excuse me. So, yeah, the communication between the teachers and the student is just pretty constant, and it's readily available. Now, we don't require our teachers to monitor their My Big Campus accounts at night. We do not do that, but many of them do. Some of them, even on weekends, will say, I'm going to hold virtual hours for these 2 hours on Saturday.
Kind of like study hall?
Right. So if you're working on this history project and you want any questions answered, you can just contact me on My Big Campus. We have students at Gibault, because we're a private school, we have students at Gibault that come from distances far apart. So working on a group activity can be difficult, because if you and I live 35 miles apart in opposite directions, if we're working on a group activity on the weekend, that could be a challenge. My big campus kind of closes that gap. You and I could get on my big campus and we could work in real time on assignments together that we are going to, maybe a presentation that we're going to make in the history class. We can work on that without being in the same room, which is quite an advantage.
Well, I can see why these educational experts are contacting you to find out more about your experience, because to me this seems to be maybe the future of education.
I would think so. Look, when you have a snow day, it is a problem for many reasons. One, if you're in the middle of a unit on any subject, that day you're making up later in May or June does you no good right then. You're dropping that day out of your 9 weeks or that unit, and you cannot really make that up. And so you're losing educational time. So it's very important that we don't miss out that time, which was really our goal. But it's also important that when we do make up those days, when schools do make up those days, that they actually make them up. It's troublesome.
You're not just sitting there.
It's troublesome to me to hear people say that, this is going to be an act of God day, and so many act of God days, then we're not making these school days up.
All they're doing is filling time in so that they meet the Illinois state standard for having been in class X number of days.
And I understand. I understand how thrilled it would be to be a student. I was a student. I was a child. To know that I'm not going to be making up all those days going to the summer. That's a good deal. But if we really believe that we want to improve education, it seems to me the cheapest way, the best way, and certainly the clearest way is to actually be in school and actually be in a learning environment. And when we say we're not going to make up those days, that is disturbing to me. And what we ought to be hearing is not how thrilled we are that we don't have to make up those days, from various groups. We should be concerned that why aren't we making up those days? We know nobody wants to go in June, but it's still a day of school, and they need to be used wisely. So I think this kind of program would help a lot of schools avoid that problem.
Mm-hmm. It also seems like you could, like you said about your practice day, that you were actually able to educate the students more than you would normally do when they're sitting in the classroom.
Yes.
And therefore you can cover more territory and maybe cover 2 semesters in one.
You have to really, it's a lot of work for the teachers, but to make it work, the teachers have to hold those students accountable for that work. If they don't hold them accountable, either through quizzes or essays or final exams, then that work doesn't become quite as meaningful. So they do have to hold them accountable, and if you're going to do that, it does become a lot of work. But our students, when they're first we were trying to figure out if they were going to buy into this. They were saying, "Well, this is a lot of work. We kind of miss our snow days." But as they started to learn the process, they learned that they could still have their snow day and also have all that work, because our teachers many times, once we know we're going to have a snow day, they post their assignments by 9 o'clock that night, or 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock.
Oh, the night before.
The night before.
Oh, so they could be working on it.
Exactly. So, and students like to stay up late. Some of our students will work till 1 o'clock in the morning, get a bulk of those assignments done. Then we take attendance at 9 o'clock on the snow day in the morning. Unless that teacher has a discussion thread they want to do or a quiz at a designated time in that day, that student then, they have the responsibility to do the work that was assigned to them when they can fit it into their schedule. Mm-hmm. Now the teacher has to be online during that day, 3 hours a day, and they have to let the students know that. So if they have any questions, they can access their teacher. But what our students are finding is, not only are we not making up these days at the end of the year, but they still may be sledding with their friends from other schools at noon, because they did most of the work the night before. They did some of the work in the morning, and they're going to do the rest of the work when they get back from sledding. So they're really getting the benefit of both of those.
Have you spoken to these kids and got their heartfelt assessment of how they thought that 4 days went for them?
Yeah, we have, and it varies. It varies. Most of the students we talked to said they were thankful to come back to school. They missed their friends, mm-hmm. And we believe, as the students clearly believe, that there's no better way to educate students right now than to be in the classroom with the teacher, who motivates, who leads, who inspires. Those are very important things that are much harder, at least today as we're speaking now, to do on an online lesson for the day. Most of them were ready to come back to school. Most of them felt like it was a lot of work on their part, and I know the teachers thought it was a lot of work. We never planned on 4 days in a row, certainly not to begin a semester. That was a challenge. I mean, I'm telling you, that was a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Here in the last 3 minutes of the show, do you have any areas that we haven't covered, or the things that you want to talk about or say to the listeners now about your school, your program, and the things that you've gone through and learned?
Well, I guess I would have to say it's a lot of hard work, and I'm very proud of our students and teachers. The teachers have done a lot of work, but I'm very proud of the students because this was difficult, I think, for them, as their friends were staying home with this big romantic view of a snow day. You know, oh, we can't wait till our school pops up on Channel 4, Channel 5, and we celebrate because we're not going to school the next day. So that was a buy-in process for our students. But the fact is, it's going to prepare them better for life. We're asking them to take responsibility, work from a remote location like many of their parents already do. And I really believe that this kind of system can be done by public and private schools. I think it's going to be easier for private schools. It's going to be much easier, but I think both can do it. And I'm guessing if you and I talked in 10 years, we'd be saying everybody's doing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's your expectation, is that this is going to become more and more popularized. But you said something interesting, and I know time's short here. You said something very interesting, that you felt that the camaraderie of the classroom with the students in it, with the teacher leading, is very important.
Oh, absolutely.
So you don't have a vision of an online classroom for most of the educational process?
No, I don't. Now, you know, as we know, things change. So maybe in that 10 years' time, I may be telling you a different story. But teachers have the ability to mold and to inspire. I believe that, and they have so much responsibility, and they lead these kids so well. And I think they are needed in that classroom. Our students want them there, want them to guide them, to inspire them. There's no better way to do it than that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been a very interesting and inspirational discussion here today. I thank you very much for coming in and being with us. I hope we can do this again another time as well and get a follow-up. Thank you very much for being with us today.
It was my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
And to those at home, I've been speaking with Russell Hart. He is the principal of Gibault Catholic High School in Waterloo, Illinois. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And a very nice school, and they have this program that they use online so that they can continue to teach people even when there's a snow day. So you might want to look this up yourself. Go to your computer, go to Google, and look up My Big Campus. For everybody, we're going to upload this to YouTube. Make sure that you send your friends who didn't see this to take a look at this program. Thanks. See you next time.